Hello, and welcome to episode 21 of Expertise is Overrated, the podcast that takes the time to answer the questions you didn't know you didn't want the answers to. I'm Sean.
And I'm Vib, and neither of us has any clue what we're talking about. Before we move on, let's award the much vaunted Expertise is Overrated Tinfoil Award.
As a reminder, this is an award that we give out at the start of each episode to the person who had the most ridiculous point in last week's episode.
Yeah, so this one, you actually overruled me, because I was honestly going to, because obviously we said nothing ridiculous last week, because we're not those people anymore. I was going to give it to Lionheart for taking time out of his busy days to come on to our show, talk to us idiots.
Yeah, I think that was going to do anything positive for his life. But no, I have, assuming you're still listening to this, Lionheart, I've heroically jumped in front of that train, and I'm giving it to myself. Now, should preface this with, I'm type 1 diabetic, and it turns out that last week what I did was I started an episode with quite low blood sugar and thought that would be absolutely fine. I then had to take a break mid-episode to fix that fact because I just dissolved into a puddle of goo and just left Vib to edit that week's episode. So we've decided that this week there is a special prize for anyone who gives us the correct timestamp of when the gap was cut out when I had ceased to function as a human being.
Yeah, thanks for that. That was very fun in terms of having to edit. And listening back to it, though, it was actually quite funny. You genuinely did devolve into some sort of
I need to re-listen. I need to re-listen to the raw audio. I've listened to the episode itself, and I can hear it in me quite early. But I know that I go from, well, I'm a bit off the mark here, to being stopped halfway through a point to have you say, "Are you okay?" and me respond with, "No, not really." Was pretty excellent.
That was excellent. It's just because you said arrogant, and I was like, that's not quite right,
didn't I? I did. I just got my words wrong. It was really bad. Anyway, so yeah, I'm
the extra savage self tinfoil for
the self tinfoil for not being able to do this despite having been diabetic for 20 years now. Pretty remarkable.
Yeah, nice.
Moving on. I'm still here. Feedback. Yeah, so we've got actually a fair bit of feedback. We didn't do any last time for obvious reasons. It wouldn't have been particularly interesting for our guest to just sit there while we spoke about episodes he hadn't been a part of.
Well, perhaps, maybe we dodged a bullet because he maybe was ready to offload just feedback on every episode in person.
Yeah, that's probably true. To be fair, he'd been storing it all up, and actually, he's just really disappointed now,
seething quietly.
That would make me so happy. So I had a conversation on Twitter with a chap called Sleek Otter. Basically, when we were on our Mistborn episode, when we were discussing the Lord Ruler, and it's quite an in-depth conversation. We get into thorny territory around right and wrong, which is always good in 140 characters. But essentially, I said something along the lines of, it doesn't matter how good your intentions are. If you're as eye-wateringly awful as the Lord Ruler, you're just a baddie. And Sleek Otter basically said that he disagreed with that because he thought that there was always something worse. And I think he's wrong. I think there are things that are just evil, and being slightly less evil doesn't stop you being evil.
Yeah. There's that really famous quote from The Witcher, isn't there?
Probably
choosing between lesser evils and greater evils. I really wish I'd prepared a quote for that now, because it would be so much better. But there is a line about if you have to choose between a lesser evil and a greater evil, you just don't choose at all.
Yeah. If you choose between a lesser evil and a greater evil, you're still picking evil.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's not the quote, but I'm going to make that the quote.
So I think I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
And we are still gearing up for our big debate on morality, and
we need to pick the media through which to have it, I think.
Well, and clearly, you thought the Lord Ruler was the one, because you thought that was clearly of such a level of evil. But that's where I was at.
He's just quite a little bit too bad.
Maybe we do a a Palpatine episode or something.
Palpatine or the God Emperor of Mankind feel like the two to have it with.
Oh well, he's obviously a good guy, so that's not really
There
much of
we
an argument.
go.
I think we found it, Jimmy's space.
Pencil that in. No, that was no. It was a good conversation. I'd encourage people to go and read the 17 lines of it or whatever it is that you can have on Twitter.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was interesting. What else have we got?
We have our friend CT on our Discord server, which he seems to be using to get in touch with us a lot. He's got some good points. This time he said, with regards to our previous episodes, so on how Creative Assembly could make a Total War Lord of the Rings, he says that one of the major issues that I see would arise if they got the licensing for it would be the expectation. It's such a big, well-known franchise that everyone would expect some of it. Oh, I don't know what that means. And if
something of it, I suspect.
Something of it, yeah. And if it wasn't perfect, people would deem it a failure. I know that fans always expect a certain level of a game or movie, but I feel that Lord of the Rings is a whole different level for expectation. And you know what? He's got a point. I think that's sort of where you were coming from.
I think he's distilled my issue quite well there. I guess the problem or the concern that people would have is that CA, it's the concern that I have, CA wouldn't be able to make exactly the Lord of the Rings Total War game that they want to play. And because fandoms and the internet at large are awful at the moment, that would be deemed to be a failure of a game and everyone would explode into tears.
I think so, yeah. I think your argument was slightly more nuanced in that, you know...
I try to be.
Sure. Maybe one day we'll see that. But you were particularly concerned about the fact that the fantasy in Lord of the Rings is of such a... It's so big and amazing. It's not about the battles, which is ultimately what the game would be about. Whereas I think CT is probably talking a bit more generally that, you know, if Aragorn underperforms in a fight or something, then people will go to war about, you know, how shit it is. A bit like when they released Troy Total War and Hector beat Achilles regularly.
Yeah, no, I think
everyone's up in arms about it.
I think that's exactly right. It'll be, there's this weird quirk of the code that means that Pippin can beat the Witch King or something because he's got this ability or what. I don't know what it would be.
Merry does, so I don't
Merry does. I mean, that would be my counterpoint, I think. But, that's absolutely fine. But you know what I mean? There would be something like that, some quirk that would be in the game that is all working exactly as intended, but there's an output of that is confusing.
Yes,
and people would react poorly to that because apparently as a species we're not capable of nuance.
No, and I'll completely going off on a tangent here, but that thing you sent me the other day, that article on coding in Skyrim with the opening scene.
Oh, that's so funny! Yes,
talk about a little bit of code that has nothing to do with the opening scene, you would think, and just this is a
complete tangent. So this very, very briefly for anyone who doesn't know this, the opening scene in Skyrim has your character
very famous,
very famously sitting on a cart being driven to an execution. But for some reason, that opening scene, despite being completely on rails, you don't have control of your character, is completely physics coded as opposed to being scripted.
That I will never understand that decision. I'm not going to lie.
Apparently, the article said this was done for loads of really important reasons, and then just moved on and didn't explain why. But that means that, for a completely unrelated reason, bumblebees are indestructible in Skyrim. It was and have infinite mass or something.
It was something with allowing you to pick them up.
In order to be able to pick up a bumblebee, it has to have infinite mass, which means that if a bumblebee hits a cart, which it can do in the opening sequence because it's fully physics enabled, it just goes mad.
The cart just goes up into the air, yeah.
But that's exactly the sort of, bringing this back to pseudo relevant. That's exactly, I think, the sort of thing that everything working as intended can have such unforeseen consequences, and that I just fear that we would have such high expectations of, given Total War Warhammer and Warhammer 2 and how good Warhammer 3 looks, we would have such high expectations that anything at all wrong with the Lord of the Rings Total War would mean it would just never get off the ground. And I come back to, look at Troy. right? Thor
Yes,
has
yeah.
some flaws. Granted, it has some pretty big flaws, but what people remember it for, I think, are things like you've just said, that it's designed in such a way that at the start, 9 times out of 10, Hector beats Achilles, despite the fact that 1 time out of 1, Achilles beats Hector.
Yeah.
In the source material.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, and I think there is very much an episode in there for us on the entitlement of the consumer.
Ooh.
Which, that's a little bit of sizzle for you.
Watch this space for episode 30, folks.
Moving on. Any more
still
feedback
talking after this episode?
Well, yeah.
Just very briefly, a friend of the show, Ellie, got in touch to say that she, having listened to the most recent episode on that had Lionheart on it, say she really liked Lionheart and she thought he sounded like a really nice guy, which is lovely. I just wonder why people never say that about us.
No, I know she was on the show and she didn't even say that about us.
I was going to say we have loads of people write in saying that our guests are great.
Yeah, Ellie was great. Lionheart's great.
Yeah, we've
for
got
the record, they both are, but show us some love.
Come on.
I think CT said the same in Discord actually, that he really enjoyed Lionheart being on the show. Yeah, well, it's a sod's life, really, isn't it?
Yeah, we toil for your amusement.
Yeah, clearly. On that note, let's just move on. Forget the feedback, and let's just move on to things that we want to talk about.
Yes, so this week we decided that we hadn't spoken about Star Wars for a while, and I was overdue saying something wildly offensive and stupid. So here we are.
I mean, my blood pressure is only just normalized after the last time we spoke Star Wars.
I'm not even
I may die.
I'm not even sorry.
Because I already know you're going to say something dumb.
I've got lots of dumb.
I sensed, I don't know, there's some disturbance in the force that tells me you're going to mention Rian Johnson somehow.
Oh, I'm going to absolutely force some Rian Johnson on you.
Well, let's get it over with.
What we've done is we've each gone back through Star Wars, and we've tried to pull out our top 5 duels. So I guess the first question is, how did you decide what a duel was? Because I was watching it going, is that a duel or is that just a fight? Is that a brawl?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, so Star Wars obviously needs no introduction. But the interesting thing about Star Wars is that it's one of those universes where there's very much, at least a duality of weapons, right? You have people with ranged things like blasters.
Yeah.
And then you have people with big laser swords. And it works because the laser swords can deflect the blaster shots. And so, that kind of works. But, and I don't really know why. I think this was entirely sort of subconscious. But I pretty much only looked at lightsaber duels.
Yeah.
And also this is also fights of sort of usually 2 people, maybe like 3 or 4, but never anything huge, I think, should be said as well.
Yeah. I think that's similar to what I did. I say I haven't gone exclusively lightsabers, but I sort of also have. But yeah, it's basically what I went for, like a sustained multi-scene fight between 2 to 3, 4 people.
Multi-scene, that's interesting.
Or,
no, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Right. But oftentimes cut more than that. So intercut with other scenes from the film. Yeah, it's not a very scientific definition of a duel.
No, it isn't. One of the problems that I faced was actually trying to think of blaster-related duels.
There's not many.
There aren't many, no. I guess the Mandalorian would provide a lot of.
The Mandalorian probably does
material for that sort of thing.
Yeah. So,
I guess maybe Solo. Did you consider Solo? I didn't even think of Solo, even though it's
the best consider film in the whole
franchise. It's second best film in the franchise.
I did consider Solo and then discounted it because it didn't have a lightsaber fight. Which probably shows where my biases lie. No, I suppose you've got the fight at the end of Solo in the weird yacht with Paul Bettany, which is excellent. but it just doesn't really make the cut to me. And I think the problem with a blaster is it's quite hard to have, and the Mandalorian does it very well. It's quite hard to have a duel with a blaster in the
I
same
think
way
that's it. Yeah,
because obviously laser swords, you have like essentially a sword fight, basically. So you can have back and forth. It can take up time. You can show who's winning, who's losing, and then you can have shifts and catch up and all of that. Blaster, lots of the blaster fights in Star Wars. So in Solo, in Rogue One, Han versus Greedo is the classic example. They're over in one or two shots.
They're over in one or two shots, like Han vs. Greedo, and that one I did admittedly consider.
I think it's a really close one.
It is, but it's got that Western vibe, like a quick draw, bang, dead,
Yeah.
and that was great. But the other gunfights are just sort of they're either over very quickly or people hide behind things and just start shooting. It didn't have a duel vibe.
No, not in the same way. Not in the same way.
I don't know. Using the word duel to define a duel is not helpful. But
what's a duel? Well, it's a duel. Well,
you're not here for education, are you? So quite the opposite, in fact.
Yeah, I think it's the sort of thing you know it when you see it as well. Like maybe.
Yeah, and let's be honest, it's swords. Swords are cool.
That's basically it.
And civilized. So I guess the format. Sorry, was that?
It's just also shiny swords.
Very shiny, yeah, very shiny. But I guess the way that we'll do this is we'll do our usual bottom to top style.
Did you want to do you do one, I do one, or shall I just run through mine? And then you can do yours, or vice versa.
I think we just do our usual back and forth.
Okay.
But we perhaps set the scene a little bit.
Yes.
Just to refresh everyone's memory as to what we're talking about. You can kick us off for a start. I feel it's usually me.
Okay, so in my number 5 spot, I have the pre-lightsaber duel between Yoda and Count Dooku in Attack of the Clones. Now, this takes place towards the climax of the film, and it is a purely Force, sorry for the uninitiated, magic-based...
Whoa! Well then, we have tinfoil already.
Magic-based duel between the sort of absolute paragon of good that is Yoda and Count Dooku, who is a sort of fallen Jedi played by Christopher Lee, who is obviously fantastic. Yeah. It's got everything. It's got lightning bolts. It's got falling rocks. I think at some point Dooku throws like a barrel at Yoda. It's amazing. I think it's great. And it's really let down by the following scene, which is Yoda and Dooku having a lightsaber fight.
Yeah. So when you started talking and you said Yoda and Dooku, I thought, oh no, he's not serious, is he?
It's a really specific bit of that fight. And I think we'll come back to it. I'll come back to why I think that's so.
Yeah, because I've actually got an honourable mention for that as well, but we'll put a pin in it. My number 5, and I know that you're traditionally very weak when it comes to these.
Oh dear.
Is Ahsoka versus Maul in the Clone Wars TV show. This is in season 7, episode 10.
But Darth Maul's dead.
Darth Maul might be. No, Maul is very much still alive.
Yes.
So this, I don't really honestly know the context because the Clone Wars gets very confusing. But it's the TV show that takes place between episodes 2 and 3 of the prequels. And Ahsoka is Anakin Skywalker's Padawan learner. And I think she sort of finds out that Maul is somewhere and he's there to kill Anakin. She confronts him. And what I really like about this one is that the setup for it is Maul tries to explain to her that he sees that Anakin is going to fall and is going to be a real shit show. And Ahsoka maybe kind of believes it, maybe doesn't, but she ultimately then says, no, you're wrong, and they fight. So that's a really nice setup to the fight, and I think it's also an incredibly well choreographed fight that isn't too over the top.
Yes.
Because a lot of the animated series, they're a bit too cartoony, and it gets a bit too crazy. But that one I thought was really nicely paced. It wasn't unrealistic, as unrealistic as lightsaber battles are.
Yeah, no, it's very good.
Yeah, so I enjoy that one. I also like a bit of double wielding when it comes to lightsabers. It's always fun to see.
Yeah, Ahsoka having a lightsaber in each hand and Maul having his saber staff makes for really quite a vision.
lot of shiny swords.
Yeah, it's very good. It's very, very good. I've not seen the Clone Wars or Rebels, so none of that's in my none of those are in my list.
You're missing out. There's some good stuff there.
Yeah, I keep being told this.
Yeah, you never listen, do you?
No. Number 4. So I, for number 4, have the duel between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader in A New Hope. So this is the first.
Obi-Wan? You mean old Ben?
Sorry, old Ben Kenobi and Vader. This
Never
takes
gets old,
place.
that line. Sorry, go on. I'll just mutter in the background.
I'm trying really hard to be helpful to our listeners here. This takes place on the Death Star, so they're surrounded by futuristic corridors, sliding doors, robots, all of that sort of thing. And this is just essentially two men who are not very good at lightsaber fights for whatever reason, standing sort of swinging swords at each other. And it sounds awful, and it's really good because it's the first lightsaber fight that we see in any Star Wars film, and it has such narrative importance and such massive payoff. It's just the fact that the actual choreography is not great is sort of irrelevant, I think.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, and we'll get back to that because I've got some views on that as well.
I may be being slightly harsh to it there. I think it's incredibly well choreographed for what it is.
Yeah, no, it's a good choice. I don't disapprove of that. For me, number 4, and I can already feel that you're maybe going to shout at me a little bit for this one.
Okay.
Because it might be too low. I don't know. I struggled a little bit with the order of all of these, actually.
Okay.
But for me, it is Obi-Wan versus Anakin Skywalker on Mustafar in Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
This is the crowning duel of the whole prequel trilogy. You know, the master fighting his apprentice, all because he loved a woman, essentially, and he couldn't quite deal with it. Yeah, there's so much emotion in that fight.
Yeah.
And you can really tell, like, both the actors, I think, did a phenomenal job. And presumably they're stunt doubles as well. Beautifully choreographed. You can really see that it meant something to those two duelists. And of course, you know, I love Anakin. I have the high ground. So many excellent lines in there. And yeah, just what a beautiful way to end what was a little bit of a letdown of a trilogy. But fantastic fight.
It's so well set as well. So it's also dark. So much of it, all you can really see is their lightsabers, and then they go outside, and there's all the lava, and it's still really dark. So they're underlit by lava, and you've got all this like really clever shadow aspect playing across Anakin's face. No, I agree. It's phenomenal. It is on my list as well, but higher because I have taste.
Okay, fair.
Number 3, I have the duel that has been christened the Duel of the Fates purely because of that is the name of the song that plays during it. This is the fight between Obi-Wan Kenobi, Qui-Gon Jinn, played by Liam Neeson, and Darth Maul at the end of episode 1, at the end of A Phantom Menace. It's just excellent. It's got Darth Maul's double-ended lightsaber. It's the first time we see anything like that in Star Wars. He's
so cool.
He's like all red and black and tattooed, and he's got horns, and he just looks like the devil. And he like growls at them and stuff, which is amazing. And it's so cinematic. And the music is just so good. And it's got some, again, it has a great emotional payoff with the death of Liam Neeson and Obi-Wan. sort of overcoming that and going on to win and cut Darth Maul in half and kill him.
Critically, when Darth Maul has the high ground.
Exactly.
I mean, what a fight that is, right?
Taking place through the needlessly massive palace generator system that's never quite explained why it exists and things like that. And it happens over 3 dimensions. It's just really well done.
Yeah, we'll talk, I think, a bit about Star Wars architecture at some point, because it's just nonsense, isn't it?
Yeah.
What I like about Duel of the Fates, so for me, it's also at number 3. Duel of the Fates. It is excellent, but I also particularly like that because that is a multi-scene fight.
Yeah, it's cut between 2 other fights.
Yeah, and I think all the fights are really entertaining. Like there's such solid action in that entire section of the film. It's really good.
Well, this is the conversation that we had in our last Star Wars episode. Phantom Menace is so harshly treated in hindsight, I think, compared with. There's a lot bad about it, but the final third, I think, is really good.
The final third is really good, and there's bits in the first 2/3 that are okay. It's just the bits that are bad are really jarringly bad.
Yes, they are. That's very true.
That's the problem. So yeah, number 3 for Duel of the Fates for both of us. Interesting.
Yeah, nothing more need be said. Number 2 for me, you've already said it. It's the Obi-Wan versus Anakin fight at the end of Revenge of the Sith on Mustafar. I'm sure we'll come back to talk about it.
Yeah, entirely fair.
I think, as you say, it's the payoff to the whole trilogy.
Yeah,
it's also the fight that we know has been coming from beat 1 of meeting Anakin in Phantom Menace.
Yeah, no, fantastic choice. Which is interesting then, because it seems that we've got reversed 2 and 4 spots. Because for me at number 2, it's Ben versus Darth Vader in A New Hope.
Okay, that's really interesting.
And I'm gonna say that right off the bat, not because it's a better fight, because let's be honest, unless you watch the sort of the remade edition on YouTube that someone's gone and done, which is really very good. But we'll come into why I think it's such an excellent fight. It really is.
It is, and I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of that conversation you've convinced me that it should be higher.
Well, no, because part of that is headcanon I have, and if there's anything we know from this show is that you do not get on with my headcanon very often.
No, it's very, very true. Your headcanon is nonsense.
You'll probably strike it from your list altogether.
Absolutely. That would be bad. You managed to put me off that scene. Okay, so my number 1 spot, my very top spot, is the fight in Empire Strikes Back between Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader that takes place through the bowels of Cloud City.
Yeah, another needlessly complicated
city. Yeah, it's ridiculous. What are they doing? Why do they have these tunnels? Anyway, it's really good. It's the first time we see Luke Skywalker really wielding a lightsaber, like properly. It's the first time we see him go up against Darth Vader, who's set up as this nemesis figure in A New Hope. And also Luke gets his ass kicked, and I'm a big fan of heroes getting their ass kicked. And it's also got the classic "I am your father" line, which is so well acted. It's so well done. And if you don't know it's coming, I imagine it must just be such a massive gut punch. I don't know that there's anyone in the world capable of watching that film and not knowing it's coming. But even then, it still carries so much weight. So that makes my number 1 spot.
It really does. You know, it's what a scene, what a fight. And I'm gonna be honest here. I really agonized over that fight. And it's not in my number 1, so it didn't make my top 5.
Didn't make your top 5 at all.
And I'm still not sure about that. I can't really quite justify it in my own head, but we'll get onto it.
Yeah.
Which means that you've obviously missed the best
clearly
fight in the entire Star Wars universe.
It's probably got an honourable mention. I do have all of Rian Johnson's fight scenes in my honorable mentions. Don't worry. So,
of course, I would give a number one spot to a Rian Johnson one. No, it is in fact in Rebels, so you've probably not seen it.
No, I probably have done actually.
It is, the
probably
ultimate final proper death of Maul at the hands of Obi-Wan Kenobi. And it's for me, so this happens in Rebels. Again, I forget the context of why they're all there, but Maul runs into Obi-Wan on Tatooine. And it's just such a, I don't know, there's almost a sense of catharsis there for Maul. And they have a conversation, it's all really poignant, and then it is just a phenomenal duel.
It's so impressive. We need to talk about that more. I think we need to come back to that as your number one spot, because it's almost not a duel.
It's almost not a duel, but it's almost it's almost the most the most sort of true to what I think proper sword duels would be like.
Yes, I think that's very fair.
Especially sort of in old Japanese culture, I think. You know, when you see people wielding katanas in films, they're just clashing endlessly. Whereas I think the duel between Obi-Wan and Maul there is more alike to what would have happened in real life, you know. Essentially one or two parries and then someone ends up dead.
Yeah.
And it's great.
Yeah, you can't just smash swords against each other. It just doesn't. It's not practical, I don't think. Cool. No, so we've got a couple of both similar and quite different lists there. You said you agonized a bit over your list. What nearly made it?
So my top four, I was very certain of.
Okay.
And I remember when we first discussed this episode, I was quite dismissive. I thought, how are we going to get a top, anything going? I can't even think of 5 fights. And then when you generally sit down and think about them, you're like, oh yeah, that fight's really good. Oh yeah, and that fight's really good. But the top 4 was crystal clear in my mind. So it came down to the number 5 spot for me.
Yeah.
And the ones that I sort of had in the running for it there, obviously the one I went for, which is Ahsoka versus Maul in the Clone Wars. And I sort of threw that in as a sort of, the Clone Wars can get it right. that animated TV, because a lot of them aren't that good. Then I also had, I thought, well, Luke versus Vader, because it's so iconic.
Yeah.
And then two that I kind of really enjoy are Ahsoka versus Darth Vader again in Rebels.
I don't know that I've seen that one, but I'm sure it's good.
It's really good. I think it's like a season finale where Ahsoka, essentially fights Darth Vader, and then she realizes that it is Anakin, and that just has all these emotional repercussions. And at the end of it, it almost looks like both of them die in the fight, because everything sort of collapses. But it's Star Wars, obviously. No,
everyone's fine.
Yeah, and then one that I sort of I toyed with the idea, because it's the only time you really see Darth Sidious in a duel. And no, I'm not going to say the one in episode 2, or episode 3 rather. But this is one in the Clone Wars where he fights Maul and Savage Opress, who's Maul's brother.
Okay.
Sidious being Palpatine, the Emperor, whatever you want to call him. Just because the Emperor's a great guy. It's nice to see him in action.
Does he fight with a lightsaber in that?
2.
Wait, what?
He's a dual wielder. Yeah.
Oh no.
Okay, I think we've killed Sean. Good. Mission accomplished.
It's like people don't understand the things they're writing about. No, fair
it's I don't know where that choice came from, because in the films he definitely only has one lightsaber, doesn't he?
Well, in
does he fight Yoda with 2?
No, he fights Yoda with 1. He fights Windu and extras with 1. He never draws a lightsaber in Return of the Jedi, and is incredibly scathing and dismissive of them. And I think that the one fight, so I've got a list of ones that are nearly made my list, and then I've got a dishonorable mention, which that fight that you've already alluded to, Yoda and Sidious in Revenge of the Sith in the Senate chamber. where they're throwing fucking SUVs at each other and what have you. And also Sidious has a lightsaber. And also Yoda has a lightsaber. And I just hate all of that. Neither of them should have lightsabers. It's just...
So that's a really interesting point. So what's transpiring is that we don't like Palpatine fighting with lightsabers.
No, and I don't like Yoda fighting with a lightsaber either.
No, so Palpatine versus Yoda, yeah, that's not a good fight. My dishonorable mention was also going to be Palpatine versus Mace Windu, Kit Fisto, Agen Kolar, and Sais Till. Or I don't even know how you say that last name. Teen,
I think.
The reason I wanted to say all their names is because nobody knows who the fuck those people were in the film. Like, let's be honest. It took a bunch of books and a bunch of extended things to name them.
Aren't they all characters in Clone Wars, though?
Kit Fisto is. I don't know about the others, to be honest.
I sort of assumed that they spent most of Clone Wars. Like, because I've definitely seen episodes of Clone Wars that at least Kit Fisto is in. And
they spend a lot of time on Kit Fisto trying to make sure that, you know, people realize he's not as shit as he looked in the films.
Yeah, because in the films they all die like dickheads, and it's really funny.
It's really funny. It literally is. I am the Senate, which is fantastic.
Mace Windu turns down the help of literally the most powerful Jedi who exists, and pulls 3 blokes out of dead end bookshelves or whatever in the Jedi library, and then just takes them to die. It's really funny.
It's so bad.
It's such a bad scene.
Because also then. Because Mace Windu is always built up as, you know, one of the strongest duelists the Jedi Order has seen. I mean, he creates his own form of lightsaber combat, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
And then he takes 3, what we then learn are Jedi Masters, to face Palpatine. We've not seen Palpatine fight before. And it's so disappointing because he does some weird spin, and he's really slow in the film. Like he moves so slowly, and yet none of them block anything.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, Windu just has him down. It's like, that wasn't very exciting.
Kit Fisto gets like 1 swing in.
Yeah, I guess like 1 swing in, but you know.
Kit Fisto gets 1 swing in, Palpatine blocks it, growls at him like a goblin, and then he's dead.
The growling is very strange as well.
There's so much they could have done with that, right? So... Well, I'm going to talk about things that are not on our list now because that scene annoys me so much, and the Yoda scene annoys me so much, and it's all
like maybe some of that fancy lightning stuff that he likes so much.
Lightning, or even don't use lightning, right? Lightning could be like his go-to thing, but he doesn't use it there. He could do something else. I don't know. There are tales in the like Star Wars Legends extended universe crap about Sith Masters who are so strong they can literally just pull people's life force out of them.
Yeah.
Imagine if he did that, right? He just waves his hand and 2 of them fall over dead. That's shit, but like you could make it clear that he is an order of magnitude scarier than anything we've seen so far, right? Count Dooku with his lightning and is able to stand up to Yoda has nothing on this guy, right? This guy rips someone's life out of them. He crushes someone else to a, you know, cubic foot or whatever it is, and then maybe he's forced to draw a lightsaber because he can't do that to Windu or something like that. Like,
but it's a real problem with the state that we're at with the Jedi Order in those films and the Sith, because I think there's been a massive sort of like the opposite of a power creep, like a power bleed almost.
Yeah, no, I think you're right.
Where you read about you know, some of the stuff that happened in the Old Republic and the Jedi and the Sith there, as you say, literally just tearing people's life force out.
Yeah, doesn't Revan have an apprentice who you can't be in the same room as him?
Because he's just that, like, yeah, he's that scary.
Yeah.
And I think it's just the level that Palpatine never reaches. Like, he's the scariest Force user, I guess, but
maybe that's it. Maybe the reason that you don't see that is that actually, for all that he's the most powerful, as you say, most powerful Force user we see, actually Sheev Palpatine's just a bit of a chump.
Yeah.
And all of the magic is going out of the world. Maybe that's what it is, but I don't know. It just pisses me off.
Yeah, and I think this leads us on to Yoda with a lightsaber.
Yeah, and I don't know what I feel about it. Maybe the answer is that I don't mind Yoda with a lightsaber. I hate the way Yoda fights with a lightsaber.
Now, I will preface this. When I first watched that film at, I don't know, 12 years old?
I know what you're about to say, and I agree with you.
I loved that scene. I was like, oh my god, Yoda, he's so fast. Yeah, and
he's
you can't even see him. And then now I rewatched it as an adult, and it's like, they virtually never hit each other.
Yeah, Yoda's just jumping around, and Christopher,
and Dooku's just stood there like
Lee is wandering around going, where the fuck's this little guy gone? It's so bad.
So they've, and I think we've talked about this before, right? I think the prequels are much more aimed at kids, and are phenomenally good at that. So
they're aimed at the kids of Star Wars fans.
Exactly, and they worked wonders because
you and I are sitting here talking about them. Not exactly. 18 years later, or whatever it is.
But no, that's in hindsight, it's slightly poor choreography. You once said to me what I think was a much greater alternative ending for that duel. I don't know if you remember.
Oh, is this the one where Yoda kills him?
No, this is the one where they have the one that you talked about, the sort of the pre-saber fight.
The force fight, which I actually think is really well done.
It is really well done.
Especially the time where you see Yoda catch force lightning, which is an incredibly big deal because we've never seen anyone do that before. The closest we've seen is the thing where Obi-Wan uses a lightsaber, and it just goes away.
Yeah.
He just basically goes, yeah, come on, try harder. That's so impressive. And I want Yoda to be doing stuff like that.
Exactly, because the idea you get from that interaction is that like Dooku is like the most insane thing we've seen so far, really, as a Sith Lord. And he throws everything he's got at Yoda, and Yoda kind of he's like, yeah, whatever, mate,
Yeah.
What else you got? And he says the line, right? Oh, much to learn you still have, my young apprentice.
Exactly.
But the way you described it to me, and which I thought was actually excellent, is that you essentially have Dooku get his lightsaber out, take a swing at Yoda, and it just doesn't, like, it just stops inches from him because Yoda's like, nah.
Yoda holds up a finger, and that's how Yoda blocks. Yoda doesn't need a lightsaber.
Yeah, and that's when he says the line, much to learn you still have. Yeah. He essentially just, like, blocks everything about Dooku. That's sort of, when you said that, I was like, that's phenomenal. You should have written the films as opposed to George Lucas.
And then I said other things about Star Wars, and you went, "Please never speak again."
Yeah, exactly. You had one moment of glory, and
because the other one that I've seen for that, which probably doesn't work with their planned story structure, is that you have the Yoda and Dooku force fight exactly the same way, and then Dooku draws his lightsaber, and Yoda looks really upset and really resigned, and he draws his he doesn't look determined; he looks genuinely sorrowful. And Dooku leaps at him or does charges at him or does whatever he does, and you just focus on Dooku the whole shot, right? And you just have, at the very last moment, there's just like a flash of green, and Yoda's standing on the other side of the room, and Dooku just I don't know, his head falls off, or he's got a hole burnt right through his chest or something like that, and you can get a sense that wow. Right,
that's an old school Japanese style.
Exactly. You go exactly like you were saying. You go to that old school Japanese style. You don't have Yoda leaping around or anything like that because that's just not realistic. You just go, he's just that fast.
I like that. Yeah,
that's why he's so scary. He's just that fast.
Well, and I'd like that he'd be reluctant to draw his lightsaber because it's such a
he doesn't draw his lightsaber until the very last moment. Yeah. He's still got time to do it.
But even just the idea of it, because I think Yoda definitely just doesn't agree with, using it.
No, exactly. He carries one because it's the mark of the order and what have you. But it's so last resort is the other way you could do that.
Yeah. That said, I did have an honorable mention in there for the way he draws his lightsaber in that fight because it's
great.
So badass, and you can see in his face that it's not really where he wants to go, but he's like, well, if this is how you want to settle it, we'll settle it.
Yeah, he draws it with the Force, which is it's the only time we ever see someone do that, just because they can.
Yeah, because it's just second nature. It's easier than using your muscles.
Yeah, I'm old. I'm not going to reach across my body for this.
Yeah, no, that's what interesting. There's so much potential in that scene.
And you've just come off the fight between Anakin and Obi-Wan and Dooku, which I actually think gets something of an honorable mention. It's weirdly paced, I think, but it really sets up Dooku as like an incredibly dangerous foe if he's able to take out Anakin and Obi-Wan, who
it does.
so impressive.
It does. You're absolutely right. But the pacing in that is off, and because what they want to achieve is Dooku's this badass, but the way they get about it, I feel, is so clumsy, which
is part of the problem. This is stepping out of the in-universe problem. Is part of the problem that they couldn't find a stuntman who looked like Christopher Lee. So
it's entirely possible, yeah. It's
the whole fight is done at Christopher Lee at 97 or whatever age he was pace.
Because that's the only way they could film it. Because they also zoom in on his face a lot, don't they?
Yeah, there's a lot of it's definitely him as he's essentially fencing with people, which is cool. I like his lightsaber with the little curve in it. It's so unnecessary, but I like it.
There are a lot of unanswered questions with that sort of thing as well, because I think it's the first time we see Obi-Wan use a lightsaber to absorb the lightning, right? Because Anakin gets hit by it. Because
Anakin gets fucked up by it, and it's really fun.
But it sort of makes you wonder, like, if the Sith hasn't been around for centuries, how do all these Jedi know how to deal with this stuff?
Well, Yoda can use Force lightning.
Yeah, quite clear. But Yoda was probably there when the last Sith were around.
Yeah, probably.
It was good, but then they just both fall a little too easily. Like, I get that you want to make Dooku seem more powerful and stuff, but there's better ways to have done it, I think.
Yeah, I think that's true. What else? What fights have we not spoken about that people might have expected us to? Well, I guess there's two that people would have expected me to talk about.
Oh, no.
So I'm gonna open with
really. Do you want to do this now?
I'm gonna open with the less controversial one first, which is the quote unquote duel between Luke Skywalker and Kylo Ren in Last Jedi. And this, you have to give me this. This is good.
Oh no, I have that as an honorable mention as well.
Good. I'm glad. This is it takes place on a salt-based planet for some reason. And Luke Skywalker actually isn't there. He's a Force hologram, which is
also salt that goes red when you step on it.
Salt that goes red when you step on it, and so there's lots of hints throughout the scene that Luke's not there, and he's just essentially toying with Kylo Ren, Ben Solo, who is set up as the sort of this series Darth Vader character, and it's really good. And then it ends with, I think, Luke just walking into the lightsaber to be like, "I'm not even here. What are you playing at?"
Yeah,
and then he dies because doing a Force projection across the galaxy is really difficult, or something.
No, that is where it loses me.
It goes potentially a step too far, but it's a really well done,
especially when Rey and Kylo are Force projecting towards each other constantly without dying.
Yeah, but we're told that someone else does it.
But like Jedi Massive Grand Master Luke, he struggles. No, the actual fight is really good. It also happens at some because at that point you're like, oh my god, how the hell is this gonna, what's gonna happen?
Yeah.
And Luke gets bombarded by all the things, and you're like,
that's
oh my god, good. So cool.
He takes the essentially full force of the First Order's military, waits for the smoke to dissipate, steps forward and rubs some ash off his cloak, which is really
such a move. Such a great move.
And also, I maintain something that Luke Skywalker would have actually done. That's a perfectly in-character moment for Luke.
Yes, 100%. So, your second one, then, I'm going to go out on a limb and say is also in the horror that is TLJ.
It's the throne room fight.
Is it the extended duel between two ships flying really slowly?
No, it's not. Although that actually should be in. I'm not sure you can call it a duel if one of them is just running away. I think there has to be.
Eventually, they do turn around and shoot back.
They do, and then they win.
Just using the ship.
No, it's the battle or the duel in the throne. I don't think it's a duel. I think that's why it didn't make my list. But the fight in the throne room of
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's one that I also wouldn't have really classed as a duel, I guess.
Yeah, Snoke's throne room between Kylo Ren and Rey, and Snoke's weirdly armed throne guard. And I just think it's really fun. I think it's really well choreographed. I think it does some interesting things with like shot angles and stuff like that. And it also highlights that like if you're not a well-trained Jedi and you go up against seriously well-trained soldiers with the right equipment, you're not just going to win because you've got a lightsaber, which I quite like. They do win, but only just.
No, you know what? I'll give you that. I'll give you that. It's very cinematic.
Mm.
The whole place is very red.
It is very red.
It's almost like they're being like, if you guys are still not sure, this is these are the bad guys.
Yeah.
And everything's on fire at the end. That's one bit I still don't get. Like I know a ship's just for him, but why is that whole room just on fire? It's all very strange. But the interaction you have between Rey and Kylo Ren, I think, throughout is quite good.
Oh, like when they throw their lightsabers to each other and like activate them through someone's face and stuff like that. I think it's really well done. I think it's good fun.
It's just sort of like, is this fight scene going to be followed up with a straight up sex scene? You know, is this
where we're at? It's serious. There's some serious pent up energy in that scene.
The tension really is something. Yeah. No, that one's pretty good actually. Yeah,
there's that heart wrenching moment where they've killed everyone and turn to each other, and you think they're going to have the passionate kiss or the
adult hug.
The adult hug, the fade to black moment, and instead Kylo Ren has his turn to evil moment, or his turn back to evil moment, I guess. And that does actually pack an emotional punch, I think. Maybe I'm just a sap.
Maybe. See, the problem, and we're back to ranting about TLJ. I think that whole thing needed just a bit more time.
No, that's fair. That's fair. I'll give you that it happens inexplicably quickly.
The whole romance happens quickly, and then the fact that Ben was a good guy, and then instantly was like, actually, you're not. No, I'm not. Like, is this some sort of like space schizophrenia? What's going on?
I'm a good guy for the 30 seconds that it takes us to kill these 18 people and cut that fella over there in half.
Using the Force to get the lightsaber, which is quite.
It's quite well done. It's quite well done.
It's quite good.
I think.
Yeah, but Snoke in general is just problematic. No, that's a decent honorable mention. Just trying to see if I had any Kylo Ren ones. No, other than the one versus Luke.
I've got a couple actually. He features in 3 of my honorable mentions.
You're such a Ben Solo fan, aren't you?
I really am a Ben Solo fan. I have an honorable mention for Kylo Ren versus Finn in Force Awakens.
No, come on!
In the snow, in the trees, only because the all of the pacing of Force Awakens is building up to both Finn and Rey being Force sensitive, and like they're going to be like dual heroes and all of that. And then it turns out that Finn just doesn't know what the fuck he's doing, and he gets his ass handed to him, and it's really funny. It's really, really funny.
No, you're not wrong there. It's actually really funny just how shit Finn is, because Ren's injured at that point as well, isn't he?
Yeah, Ren has taken a Wookiee bowcaster to the chest, which we have been hit over the head through the entire film.
You will just die.
It knocks you 10 meters back, kind of thing, right? So, and he keeps punching himself in the chest because he's aggressively metal and all of that, and he still like essentially cuts Finn in half. Like, it's just
Finn's
really
so shit.
It's just really, really funny.
But there is also the fight between Finn and the other stormtrooper, right? Where Finn picks up the lightsaber.
Oh, it gets his ass kicked.
Exactly, just gets his ass kicked by some random stormtrooper.
Yeah, no, that's the thing, because you get the sense when he draws the lightsaber in the forest. Your mind goes back to that, and your mind goes, "Oh, this must be the time.
This is the moment,
or something like that." And he just doesn't.
Yeah, so that really nicely highlights your point. Like, if you pick up a lightsaber, you are not instantly good. Finn exemplifies that. He
No,
lives that.
Absolutely. I just really like
Picks up a
it.
lightsaber a few times and just gets fucking, killed
Yeah,
pretty much both times.
His life expectancy goes down dramatically while holding a lightsaber.
Yes, you're a big Kylo Ren fan. Interesting. One that I think we should talk about. Again, one of the films, Obi-Wan versus General Grievous. Just because Grievous is so weird, for starters. And it's another one that gave us some great lines. I mean, hello there. Yeah. So uncivilized.
So this is
fantastic
Obi-Wan.
Stuff.
This is Ewan McGregor in the prime of his acting career. Facing up against
prime Obi-Wan, yeah.
So magnificently bearded, flowing long hair, facing up against like a robot with lungs.
A really badly assembled robot that's got like a pair of lungs, a heart,
and eyeballs.
Nothing else. Eyeballs, yeah.
Has human or alien eyeballs.
Sounds like he's been smoking for years.
But also wields 4 lightsabers in some sort of really confusing whirling death configuration, and they battle across like a bunch of sinkholes on a quite green planet. And yeah, there are some great lines. You're absolutely right. And this also has an excellent use of the Force, which I think there needs to be more of. When Obi-Wan drops down, says the immortal "hello there" line, General Grievous sicks his guards on him, and Obi-Wan drops like a 10-ton container on them.
Yeah. That's really good.
Die.
You're right. The Force is massively underused in a lot of these duels, don't you think?
Yeah, I think a lot of the time because they cancel each other out. Right? You see it in.
See, I'm glad you say that.
See it on Mustafar. I think Obi-Wan and Anakin sort of try and use the Force against each other, but they seem to be able to resist each other's Force use and stuff until that one time where they like fling each other across the room, and it's really impressive.
They're like trying desperately to hold hands, and they just can't quite do it.
Yeah. Why don't you love me? I don't love you. Oh.
No, so that's I think a really interesting point, and I think maybe nicely segues onto my number 1, and also therefore my number 2. So Obi-Wan versus Maul in Rebels.
Okay.
There's so many layers to it. I feel right. It's a short, which I quite enjoy sometimes in a duel.
Yes,
and it's quite realistic. There's also a death in it, which I think is actually unusual. In the grand scheme of things unusual. The 3 Jedi Masters that Sidious kills, notwithstanding.
Yeah, there are no deaths in. Given that apparently Maul survives getting cut in half, there is only 1 death in my 5 duels.
Yeah, and so
it's not real.
And it's the Duel of the Fates, which I think makes the Obi-Wan versus Maul fight particularly exceptional. And it's a clear demonstration to me that Obi-Wan at that point in his life, this is on Tatooine, very near the start of A New Hope. Maybe not necessarily very near, but like a few years before. And he's obviously so attuned with the Force that when he faces Maul, I think he's so focused. I think he knows exactly almost what's going to happen. I don't want to sort of say he's entirely prescient, but he's just so centered.
Yeah.
That duel is exactly what it is. And it's a complete throwback to Duel of the Fates, right? It's going to get very technical now.
Yeah, which is what Liam Neeson does the same thing. So Qui-Gon Jinn is similar, isn't he?
Well, Qui-Gon, yeah, because Qui-Gon does that whole thing where he sits down and he centers and then still gets beaten.
But I think, I almost wonder. Sorry, I'm interrupting your train of thought.
Yeah, go for it.
Continue. I was just wondering whether I don't know why you're listening an hour into this podcast if you haven't seen these, but in case you need reminding, in Duel of the Fates, Liam Neeson's character, midway through, they're separated by force fields, so he sits down and meditates. And Maul, meanwhile, is like pacing and like knocking his lightsaber against the force fields and stuff, and it's really atmospheric. And then the force fields part, Qui-Gon gets up, like fights with Maul for a bit, and then dies. And I always assumed that he knew that was coming.
I also think, well, all of them did, right? Because just before the things open, it's almost like you get this sense that Obi-Wan gets this thing of like, oh, fuck.
I got to get through. Yeah.
Qui-Gon, I think, knows he's going to die, and I think
I think he
Maul
does.
senses victory.
Yeah.
So I think you're not wrong there. But what I think is amazing, right? Because if you watch, it's again more in the animated series. Like Obi-Wan has a very specific style. You see it in the films quite a bit, where he sticks like his left hand forward and his lightsaber sort of facing the same way.
Yeah.
It's an aggressive stance. So it's Form 3, supposedly, the Suresu stance.
All right. Nerd.
Getting super nerdy here. And that's his favorite thing, and that tends to be how Obi-Wan fights. Now, he's one of those guys that's really good, so he has a multiple different stances. But that's also how he starts that duel against Maul. He takes up that classic stance of his.
Okay.
And Maul, gets his... It's really cool the way they draw the sabers and the way it gets really tense. But Maul takes on the stance that he took against Qui-Gon.
Okay.
Right? And you can see that Obi-Wan sees that, and he changes his stance to Qui-Gon's, which is apparently Form 4, the Ataru stance.
Okay.
Right? It's a thing where quite classic sword where he just holds it to his side, the way Qui-Gon always does in these fights.
Yeah, it's two-handed, just off to the right, pointing straight up, as opposed to one-handed over and past your head with your left hand extended. For I don't know why I'm still helping.
No, that's entirely true, and so that's a massive throwback, I think, to Qui-Gon, and that Obi-Wan hasn't forgotten. And it also just shows that he's transcended, because then he knows what Maul's going to do, and Maul does exactly what he does to Qui-Gon. He does a few strikes, and then he tries to hit him in the face with the hilt, which is how he kills Qui-Gon.
Yep.
But Obi-Wan obviously anticipates that, and then cuts straight through the hilt and straight through Maul, and that is like over in 3 strokes.
Yeah,
it's just like, this guy has got so unbelievably good.
You're right.
You can't win.
Yeah, no, he's going to do. He knows what you're going to do, and he has the perfect counter for it.
Yeah.
No,
it's such a neat throwback, I thought.
I'll be honest with you. When I watched it recently, I spotted the stance change. I didn't register that he was moving. He was doing what Qui-Gon did. I didn't register that that's what he changes to. Obviously, it is, because I can picture that scene where it zooms in on each of their faces, and you see Qui-Gon's stance, and it is that very, as you say, very classical, sort of very upright.
But it's the strike to the face, right, which stuns Qui-Gon, and then he gets stabbed. It is, and that's the thing where Obi just cuts straight through him. But then also following on from that, my logic, right, that Obi-Wan is so centered and so good, is also why I think Ben versus Darth Vader is such a shit fight. Because here, instead of Anakin Skywalker versus Obi-Wan Kenobi and Mustafar, where they're still kind of young and it's emotional. The Ben versus Vader fight, like, this is a proper Sith. Well, I guess he's technically an apprentice, but he's a Sith Lord. Has been a Sith Lord, killing many Jedi for generations. Ben is this old, totally centered guy. Mm-hmm. So in my head, the reason their fight is so underwhelming is because they essentially just do the whole fight in their heads. And they're like, well, there's no point actually doing the moves, because we know exactly that he's going to block and so on and so forth. And so they just do a few token, like, touching of swords. And then Ben obviously does his, if you strike me down, it's not a big deal.
I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine. Which is such a good quote.
It's so good. And then, so in my head, I think they just realized that
they're just doing the fight in their heads.
Yeah, they're like, well, we can go through the motions here, but
so my theory for why it's such a quote unquote shit fight is that you've got Ben Kenobi, who is at this point just an old man. Right, I don't know how old he's meant to be, but he's also aged really badly on Tatooine. So he's just not the limber master swordsman that.
See, the problem with that already is
Obi-Wan was.
Because they sort of retcon that type of thing when they show Yoda, who always uses a walking stick, just becoming
but Yoda's a different
Olympic
species,
gymnast.
So it doesn't count. Right, I
suppose that's a fair point
of Star Wars, right? Yoda's 900 years old, but he's also a little goblin species, so I don't care what he can do.
Maybe.
I've always just assumed that, because there's one of his species is the is a grandmaster in the Knights of the Old Republic games. I just assume that his species is super force attuned, which is probably species to me, but I don't really care. But no, so I assume that what we've got there is Ben Kenobi is this old guy. He's not the dazzling swordsman that Obi-Wan was. And on the other side of the fight, you've just got Darth Vader, who's rusty. Like, when was the last time Darth Vader fought a Jedi?
It's unclear by the time A New Hope arrives, right? Because remember at the end of Rogue One, where he storms the breach and just flat out murders like 20 guys.
Yeah, but they're all just blokes.
Yeah, that's true. So he's not fought any.
When was the last time he fought?
Jedi
And also, the last time he fought Obi-Wan, he lost. Right, so he's hyper cautious. And he's also not super limber. You see that anytime you see Darth Vader fight, he's not limber. He's not leaping around all over the place. He's just super strong because he's a robot, right? So I think the reason that the fight is shit is that these are two people who they know nothing about each other because they've not fought each other in so long. And obviously Obi-Wan's style has changed, and he's never seen Darth Vader fight. And also just like maybe the fight does happen in their heads to a degree, but I think more than that, the fight is it's with words more than anything else.
Yeah, which I think is totally emblematic of that trilogy. The fights are more about the scene in which they are set rather than the fights themselves. No, I like that theory as well. But I really like Darth Vader
fight expecting to win it as well. That's the other thing. He knows he's not going to win that fight.
Exactly. I think he goes there to die, essentially.
Yeah. So that's also why he doesn't fight, right? He circles, he shuffles, he talks, because every second that he does is a second that he's buying Luke, Leia, and Han.
Yeah.
That's the other thing.
Luke then sprints towards them.
Yeah, because Luke's an idiot.
Luke is an idiot. No, but that's a really good point about Darth Vader. He's made out to be not very limber, but I think it creates arguably the Jedi who has the most efficient lightsaber style ever.
Swing kill.
But then that's the thing. But like he is, and again, you see that more in the animated series. But he fights all these super agile people, and still he only he blocks them, but he does it so easily. And then it ends up killing him because he swings once and it's like a fucking house coming down on top of you.
Yeah, I mean
he's just super strong.
I'm not sure how much we can take from this, and we're just now talking about Star Wars again. But in the most recent Star Wars video game, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, spoilers for Fallen Order if you haven't finished it. Darth Vader is in that at the very end.
Yeah. I forgot about that. And that was terrifying.
It's fucking terrifying because you've become this, like, what you feel is really quite powerful Jedi, right? You can go through Inquisitors, you fight the head Inquisitor, and eventually, after dying many times because it's a really hard fight, you beat her. And then Darth Vader
really
appears.
Hard fight.
Darth Vader appears, and you physically can't fight him. You get near him, you die. And depending on which way you get near him, you die in different ways. You can actually swing. I've managed it. You can actually swing at him, and he blocks it, and then you die. And I think
no, that's exactly what Darth Vader is.
I think it actually, like you say, it really captures this essence of he's almost like the Terminator. He's just this relentless force.
That's quite good actually.
That there's just nothing you can do about. He's just this force of inevitability, really, that he becomes. And it is a bit of a shame because, like, Anakin, obviously, in the prequels, is a really nimble swordsman, like you were saying. He always jumps around. He's very, very, his sword spins a lot. He does all sorts of weird things where he, like, holds the lightsaber over his head and then, like, down his back and stuff. And I never quite understood why you would do that. But anyway. And then he goes from that to this, like, Darth Vader is essentially a robot.
Yeah.
But
he still somehow, I think they did that really well with Anakin, I think, towards the end, where he starts encompassing these things that you see in Vader.
Yeah, Anakin becomes a lot stronger. You see
there's the fight in the opening scene, right, of Sith.
Yes.
Where he just wails on Dooku so hard and so fast that there's just no stopping him.
Yeah, and you see that look of fear go across Dooku's face, which was
Yeah.
really, really quite something.
No, Anakin and Darth Vader are quite something.
They absolutely are.
A few last ones I just want to get in.
Okay.
I wrote down anything with Satele Shan, and I'm referring essentially to the Star Wars: The Old Republic, the massively multiple online role-playing game.
Yeah.
Their trailers, she was in a lot of them for like the Jedi stuff, and those fights were highly entertaining.
She's the
Grand Master
in the Old Republic, isn't she? Yeah.
And again, you can tell there's been a level of like power bleed because the way those guys all fight each other is just on another level.
Yeah, I played a little bit of that, and you're like, what you can do as a level 4 Jedi Knight is like, I cut Obi-Wan in half.
Yeah, Mace Windu would be dead instantly.
Yeah,
and you don't even have a lightsaber at that point. So that's excellent. And the other one I thought, just because it's such an excellent show that we haven't talked about at all, Mando versus Moff Gideon.
Yeah,
that was a really entertaining fight. I thought
that is a very, very entertaining fight. It made all the better by the fact that it's Pedro Pascal using a spear again.
Yeah, actually, I hadn't even thought of that.
No, it was pointed out to me, and I was like, oh shit, yeah, that is why that's so good.
He's such a good spearman.
Yeah, no, that is a phenomenally well done fight. I really enjoy that.
No, I think unless you have some more honourable mentions.
Do I have any more honourable mentions? What have I got? No, I think we've spoken about all of them. I think the last thing is that quote that you found on the Yoda versus Sidious fight in Revenge of the Sith, which we haven't really spoken about other than to complain about it. But
it's because it's so shit. That's the problem.
So shit, but I don't think we fully encompassed just how bad it is. And I think the quote that you found, which I'll let you read, is sort of nails it.
Yeah, this was when I was doing my research, because of course I spend many hours a week researching for these episodes, as you can tell by my vast knowledge. This was by someone called Vinny Mancuso on Collider.com, which I'd never heard of, but it was actually very, very well written. I think they just ranked more or less all the duels in the films in order. And on the subject of Yoda versus Sidious, I thought this was just so appropriate. He says, or she, this one suffers just a little bit because it happens side by side with the much better Anakin versus Obi-Wan fight on Mustafar, which is absolutely right.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Yeah. But I also think, for better or worse, the climactic showdown between Yoda and a fully effed up looking Palpatine is pure prequels. It's got lightsaber flips. It's got CGI fuckery as far as the eye can see. It's got Ian McDiarmid not chewing scenery, but devouring it like a sarlacc pit. Aesthetically, it's an entire mess, but George Lucas has established such an over-the-top, operatic tone at this point that you sort of flow with it. With that mindset, this one gosh dang entertaining battle of sabers, insults, and lightning fingers, the Force's 3 most powerful weapons. Yeah.
When you look at it like that, that's very hard to argue with. It's batshit insane. They genuinely do throw like bus-sized hovering platforms at each other in a room that's too big.
But I think George Lucas kind of snookered himself, right? Because they made Yoda so fast in the second episode against Dooku that they were like, well, we can't make him any fast. We just don't have the budget for it. So we just need to make the things that they do to each other like bigger. So they'll just throw the Senate at each other. I was like, okay, yeah, fair.
It is. I feel like it's George Lucas trying to be like deep and thematic because the conflict between Yoda and Palpatine destroys the Senate.
Yeah, but like at that point, no one cares about the Senate anyway.
No, that's the problem. That's why I say trying. Like, I think he's trying to go for this big, like, overarching message about like conflict is bad, or I don't know, something equally non-contentious. But it just misses. and ends up as the quote says, just pure prequels. I really like it's got Ian McDermott not just chewing on scenery but devouring it like a salamander. He's having so much fun.
Yeah. No, I must say that was a great quote. You know, to maybe throw in a last minute bid for the tinfoil here.
Okay.
You would argue maybe this is some element of foreshadowing that George Lucas was trying to go for, right? So they're fighting in the Senate after he has said, "I am the Senate," and Yoda's like tearing down the Senate, and ultimately Yoda tears down the Emperor from beyond the grave, no less, in Episode 6. But no, I don't think George Lucas is quite that clever.
That's a bad attempt to get tinfoil.
No. I think, spoiler alert, I'm giving it to you next week.
Yeah, I feel like...
I will find a way.
I feel like I've got that coming. I said a couple of stupid things.
No, but I think at this point, all we can do is thank you so much for listening to this episode of Expertise is Overrated. No doubt we've said some things that are either objectively wrong or downright offensive. As ever, feel free to let us know, rate the podcast and leave us a comment or drop us an email at expertiseisoverrated@gmail.com, tweet us at zeroexpertise, check out our website expertiseisoverrated.podbean.com, or come join us on our Discord server.
If you're lucky, we might just argue with you in one of our upcoming episodes. Now, if you're really lucky, we might call you an idiot. Now, in our next episode, it's happening again.
Oh, no.
That's right, the moment you've all been waiting for. I'm having another hot take.
Oh, no.
This time, I'll be explaining why the much maligned end times from the Warhammer Fantasy universe was in fact a good thing. Oh boy! Join us then for more nonsense.